Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Wrestling Doesn't Make Sense. It is a show where me and John talk about pro wrestling and whether or not it makes sense. And today, on today's episode, we have an exclusive interview with The Rock. Ha, only joking. No, we're going to be talking about the WWE releasing people again.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, WWE, for making our job super easy. Giving us shit to talk about once again. Does this make sense? Well, we're gonna talk about it live on this show. What a treat for everybody listening. So, like I said, this is like I think the third time that we've talked about the WWE making their releases.
Yep.
And it didn't make any sense the first two times. So the spoiler alert, it's probably not gonna make any sense the third time, but let's see how it plays out. Let's see what happens. So where to begin? So previously on the WWE releases, we've seen big, high-profile names being released. We've seen the Iconics being released. We've seen Bray Wyatt,
Braun Strowman,
and a bunch of other guys. But some people were released last year as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so the WWE has, and rightly so, been under fire for not only releasing people during the pandemic. I mean, you can argue whether or not the pandemic is over now. It very much isn't. But some people seem to think it is over, but we're still in the midst of it. So releasing a lot of people during a worldwide pandemic, never a good look. Doing it 3 times this year, it's definitely not a good look. Doing it right after they did a conference call where they announced that their profits for this quarter were up 15%. and then announcing that they're releasing all of these people due to budget cuts.
Mm-hmm.
Not a good look.
Yeah, it seems a bit suspect.
That one got me so angry. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Nobody bought it was budget cuts to begin with, right? We're not idiots. But the billion-dollar company can't afford fucking some of those NXT fucking guys.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Oh, there's budget cuts to get rid of those guys.
Mm.
And this time around, we've seen some names like Karrion Kross, Scarlett Bordeaux, and Keith Lee, for example.
Yeah.
No, those guys have only recently been called up to the Scarlett Bordeaux didn't even get onto the main roster.
Mm-hmm.
God bless her. Which obviously would have been a great idea if they'd done it. Why isn't Karrion Kross getting over without all the gimmicks that got him over? I can't figure. You and me have in the past talked about how as a wrestler we were never like super into Karrion Kross, right?
Yeah.
But he had the whole gimmick, the whole package, which they delivered perfectly in NXT. The whole look, the intro, the song, and that whole smoke and mirror shit, which we thought would have been a fucking lock. Like a slam dunk for the main roster, because that's what they want. That's what they like. All that entertainment bullshit, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if he's not a great wrestler. He doesn't have to be. He's a big guy that can throw people around, and he's got a great intro. Like, it should have been like the easiest fucking sell for the WWE, and instead of that, they took all of that shit away. It's just boggles the mind. But those would have been the more high-profile names, really.
Yeah.
Mia Yim and stuff like this. But like
Nia Jax as well.
Well, we'll get to Nia Jax in a second. But those guys there, right? Let's Keith Lee and Karrion Kross, who were on NXT and got moved up to the main roster. Like, how much fucking money could they possibly even been making? You know what I mean? If they were on NXT contracts, they'd only recently been called up to the main roster. They weren't on $1 billion contracts. Like budget cuts. I don't think that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
That's nobody. This time around, nobody was buying it, especially after that fucking 15% increase in profits. I don't know. It was like 255 million. I think was the number.
Yeah, 255.8 million, in fact.
Oh, thank you. But that 0.8 million, right? You know what I mean? Like fucking was Karrion Kross making 0.8 million on his contract. You know what I mean?
Yeah, probably not.
Exactly. Like fucking budget. Like if you add up all of the money that all those guys were being paid, and compare it to that 255.8 million profit for that quarter was in the year.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a blip in the ocean. It's a tiny drop in the ocean compared to the money they're making. So nobody was buying the budget cuts. That was very strange. Nia Jax possibly would have been making more because she was on the main roster for a longer time.
Yeah.
And she was in some high profile stuff. She's a former champion, former tag team champion.
Mm-hmm.
The Nia Jax situation. Yeah. Nobody really wants to see anybody lose their job, right?
That's true.
You know, we have mentioned me. I would say probably more so than you.
Yeah.
I don't want to necessarily lump you into this, but I will happily say that. I mean, it's on the show. You can go back and listen to it. That I have frequently said, Nia Jax not a great pro wrestler.
No, considering how long she's been on the main roster, and you'd have thought she would have, noticeably improved her skills, being under that spotlight. It's not really happened as much as I dare say most people would have wanted or expected over the last, 5-6 years, however long she's been on the main roster.
But that's it. Like she's been there for a long time, and even this year, there were reports. Not just reports. You could watch the fucking matches.
Yeah.
Of her being sloppy, or her just throwing people around, or her being strange to work with. That match with her and Charlotte, people are really coming down hard these days on Charlotte being difficult to work with. And maybe that is a factor. I mean, she's a Flair. She's probably not a walk in the park, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I argue that if you watch that Charlotte Flair Nia Jax match, that infamous match, like she's doing her best to get a match out of Nia Jax.
Yeah.
I don't think it's Charlotte's fault. I mean, she probably should have handled herself better.
Oh, no doubt.
But then again, like, look at what she had to work with. Like that sounded harsh. But you know what I mean? Like in that match, it's not like she can just lift up Nia Jax and throw her around.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Nia Jax is a much bigger wrestler than her. That's just the facts. And Charlotte had, it's harder for Charlotte to knock some sense into Nia Jax than it is for Nia Jax to knock it into Charlotte Flair. I think, just that match, if you watch it, I'm not saying that Charlotte is absolved from all the blame, but Nia Jax should know better at this point in her career. And so, yes, I've said before, and in some ways, I'm like, how could you release the Iconics and not Nia Jax? Because when you look at the quality of matches and the entertainment factor on the mic skills, everything that you need for being an entertainer in the WWE, surely you would pick the Iconics over Nia Jax. I mean, it's a moot point now because they're all gone. Who cares about the women's division anymore, right? Got to get rid of them all. But yes, I'm not happy to see Nia Jax not having I mean, I would have rather she went to NXT and got better.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think that there's a place for somebody like Nia Jax. She could, if she learned how to work better, she could be a really good force on the women's roster because she stands out. She's unique, and that's what the women like. The way Awesome Kong did in TNA, she stood out because there was nobody else like her, and they got really good stories out of the other women because of that. I'm like, well, that could have been Nia Jax if she wasn't so sloppy and also so fucking pig-headed. But
yeah, well, I think that's probably the main sort of like mark against her as well, was that she had this reputation for being a really unsafe worker. Like she'd injured Alexa Bliss and Kairi Sane, yeah, and Becky Lynch when she busted open her nose. Yeah.
Yes. Becky Lynch, who now is one of their hottest properties.
Mm-hmm.
and was on the way to a push, and fucking Nia Jax just fucking potatoed her.
Yeah.
Smacked her in the face, and that was bad for business. I mean, it gave Becky like a really good look, but I'm pretty sure Becky didn't say, "Hey, Nia Jax, punch me in the face as hard as you can, bust me open." That'll look really good on TV. It's a happy accident, and they made the best of it, but it shouldn't have happened to begin with. So, the Nia Jax thing, we're not happy about it, but also, like we said, nobody wants to see anybody lose their job. But the fact about the Nia Jax situation, like you said, is that she had a bit of a reputation for injuring people, for being a bit stoppy. And I mean, again, we're not telling tales out of school here. You can watch the matches. That shit's on tape, right? But like we said earlier, the fact that nobody is buying the budget cuts reason this time. I mean, they got away with it twice already this year. We're not. How thin is your budget?
I wouldn't even say they got away with it those 2 times either.
Yeah, well, we probably give them a bit of a pass. I mean, we talked about it, but we're like, whatever. Like, it's pretty stupid. No, but the point is that nobody is buying it the third time, right? We're certainly not buying it as budget cuts. But I did want to talk about the fact that obviously there's other shit at play here. Now, we suspected there might have been other shit at play with Bray Wyatt, for example. We were like, how could you get rid of a guy like Bray Wyatt? I thought it was maybe contract negotiations, and then it turns out it wasn't. I thought that maybe they were releasing it from the contract because it was too much, and they were going to reschedule it or restructure it. Turns out they just didn't like Bray Wyatt. I guess. Very, very strange. But I think this time, I feel like there's more to some of these releases than have let on. And, Nia Jax has had that reputation for injuring people and for being sloppy and for not getting better. But I've also heard that the WWE obviously have a thing in place where they need a lot of their talent to be vaccinated.
Yes.
Because they're a worldwide company, and they obviously are looking at touring across the world again. It's okay to do that in the United States, where it's questionable in some states whether or not vaccination is even a good thing. A lot of states, you know what I mean?
There's like a thing which happened just the other day where like Ted Cruz was criticizing Big Bird because posted a tweet about getting vaccinated. I mean, Jesus.
I find it endlessly amusing when grown-up adults, grown-up real-ass fucking people get angry at fictional characters. This isn't the first time this has happened this year. This shit just blows my mind. It's even worse when it's like politicians. And they get angry at fucking cartoon characters or whatever. And Ted Cruz is up in arms over Big Bird. You're like, if you're getting outplayed by a fucking man in a bird costume, maybe you want to take a look at your own policies, right? That's, if a fucking, that shit was like 40 years old. That Big Bird clip was from, like the 70s or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I think this was an actual tweet that Big Bird put out like that night or something, but still.
Well, somebody found a clip from Sesame Street where Big Bird was like, on Sesame Street, they were actually talking about like getting vaccinations and stuff because this shit's not a new thing.
No.
I don't know why people pretend it is, but like,
it's not a political thing either.
No, it's a fucking common sense thing.
Yeah, life or death.
Yes, it's like a real actual thing, and then of course people are playing it like, and that that applies to what we're going to talk about too. But I feel like people are playing it like it's a fucking Democrats versus Republicans thing. I'm like, that's not what it is. It's about whether or not you want to get sick and die. I'll be honest with you, I don't really want to get sick and die. At the moment, I'm okay with like doing that. So the WWE have a responsibility to make sure that a lot of their, if they're going to go to regions such as the UK, for example, that a lot of the people, well, all of the people that they tour with are vaccinated. It's like I said, it's okay to get away with that in certain states in the US, but if they're going to start going to the UK like they are now, or to Canada, or to do bigger worldwide tours, they're gonna have to get smarter with this vaccination stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from what I've heard, they were cracking down on this stuff. They were now we've seen that they were in the UK recently, and we've seen that they're doing a couple of dates in Canada at the end of the year, presumably as a test run to do a couple more. And while the UK is pretty fucking lax when it comes to the whole COVID thing, as we know, we've had to live through some questionable. I mean, it's only a matter of time before Boris Johnson picks a fight with Big Bird. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
it's pretty close.
Or like the UK equivalent, like a Teletubby or something.
Yeah, what would be the UK equivalent? Because I feel like he will just start. He's gonna start picking a fight with Zippy from Rainbow or something.
Mr. Blobby.
Mr. Blobby. Oh god, that is a fight nobody wants to see. Boris
I don't know.
Johnson
I'd
versus
pay to
Mr.
watch
Blobby.
it.
I mean, if I'd watch it for free, I don't think I'd pay to, I think I'd pay to see Mr. Blobby versus Brian. I'm seeing double here. Two idiots, like, or four idiots. I can't decide. No, but yes, I feel like we're dangerously close to that kind of territory ourselves. But you know, the protocols are still in place, especially if they were going to Europe or other countries like that, Japan, etc. They need to be smarter with this vaccination stuff. So one thing that I have heard, and again, a lot of the time whenever you hear stuff about pro wrestling, it's hard to know if it's true or not, right? It's all dirt sheets. It's all like, what's funny is that when the dirt sheets just make shit up, it feels like they're trying to work everybody, which is funny because they're talking about pro wrestling. They're trying to get to the truth of pro wrestling, which is shrouded in mystery anyway. And then they make shit up, which sounds like they're trying to work the people, even though they're trying to be truthful about the work. It's very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Wrestling journalism is very, very strange. But I've heard that some of the people that have been released on this time, this third time around, are people that just, you know, weren't getting vaccinated or had no interest in getting vaccinated, including Nia Jax.
Mm-hmm.
I had heard that she wasn't going to get vaccinated, and that's a part of the reason why she was let go. I've heard that the some of the reasons were the people were let go, and not just this time, but in the prior times this year, is that people weren't getting vaccinated. It was people who had asked for their release already and were denied and were given it this time, or that they were just pains in the ass to work with. And a lot of those things kind of, you can see some of those themes turning up in this set of releases, right? There was a thing a while ago where Vince McMahon was very angry at anybody who caught COVID because they weren't taking it seriously. Which is silly because, like, you know, no, I don't think anybody goes out to catch it on purpose, you know. But like, wasn't there a thing where somebody caught it at a party at the beginning of the year and Vince McMahon fucking flipped his lid?
Yeah, I think there was like a big New Year's party or something, and I think it was one of the Forgotten Sons, and
yes, I think
he ended up losing his job because of it. Definitely,
Steve Cutler, I think, right?
Yeah,
but around about that time, Keith Lee caught the coronavirus, as did Mia Yim caught it from Keith Lee.
Mm-hmm.
So there were all sorts of issues with Keith Lee on the main roster that appeared to be backstage shit, because to us, the humble viewer, he seemed to be doing pretty well, right?
Yeah.
We all like Keith Lee. We thought, there's a guy you can't screw up. How could you possibly fuck this up, right? It would take, boy, the stupidest person in the world to fuck this up. Fortunately for us, one of the stupidest people in the world happens to run a wrestling company. Well, not just one.
Yeah.
Evidently, not just one. So I think that's probably part of the reason why Keith Lee and Mia Yim got let go.
I think as well. I mean, we've heard lots of reports about the WWE is changing mindset in what they want for new recruits to the performance center, and a lot of the the people that they're bringing in have to hit certain criteria, like they have to be under 25, and I think age is probably a factor in some of these releases as well, because guys like Karrion Kross is in his mid to late 30s. Harry Smith in his late 30s as well, I think now. Nia Jax is in her late 30s as well. Eva Marie, like all these guys are getting on in years, and maybe they think like, maybe there's not as much value in those kind of superstars as there is for the young guys that they can build from scratch and then have around for as long as they want. And maybe that's played into it somehow as well, I guess.
But do you think that that's a factor, the age thing?
I think it's probably part of the reason, or the justification at least, that they've kind of come up with to say, oh, let's get rid of these guys. But
right.
I mean, I think there is a myriad of reasons, though. They again, it's more them convincing themselves why they should get rid of them than you can say their actual genuine reasons for needing to get rid of these guys, or
Well, you don't think it was budget cuts?
I would say probably not. No.
I do agree that it's probably a lot of these factors, right? Because people are like, oh, how could you let go of somebody for their age? Because, I mean, if it was solely because somebody was 40 years old, then that's a stupid reason to let go of somebody. Shouldn't have signed them to begin with, The Harry Smith one's fucking weird. They just signed him.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, out you go. Like, he wasn't even on TV.
He had one dark match. That's it.
but wasn't there a corona thing with him? Isn't that part of the reason why his debut was next? Didn't he have some kind of run-in with? I mean, that's the problem is these days is that there's a 50-50 chance that any kind of non-appearance is because of COVID.
I thought the extent of that with Harry Smith was they had originally planned for him to go over here to the UK to be part of NXT UK, but they couldn't really send him over with the restrictions and whatnot. So that's why they were sitting on him and then like considering whether or not to just bring him up to the main roster instead.
Did they just lift those restrictions?
Yes, I believe so. So,
oh boy, yeah. Their face is probably pretty red right now.
Yeah,
they are gonna look pretty silly once they realize that they could have held on to Harry Smith for another week. Used him in NXT. He would have been good in NXT UK.
Yeah, he would have been awesome. But again, I don't know. There's like a short-sightedness, I guess, to some of these things. Like, I don't know. They sign these guys up or they bring them up from NXT. And there's no real plan in place. And then when they bring them up and they just like throw them out there and they don't give the superstars a chance to kind of do what made them a success in NXT in the first place, like with Keith Lee and Karrion Kross and like you could probably say a whole bunch of others as well. Yes. Like the fact is, of course, they're going to flounder and not get over with the fans because you're not giving the fans what they're used to and what they want. So.
Yes.
I had to put that blame on the superstars and say, oh, well, yeah, you just weren't good enough to get over. There's bullshit. It's the creative has to take a big chunk of the responsibility there because there's only so much that the wrestlers can do.
Well, that's the thing. I had heard somebody, this is clearly we're really good wrestling journalists. Oh, somebody said this, blah, blah. But part of the thing about Karrion Kross was that he wasn't getting over with the fans, which, as you've just said, is total bullshit. If they've given him like a shitty gimmick that they put no thought into, and
they had him lose to Jeff Hardy in his very first match.
Right, they've half-assed his fucking push on the main roster, and then for them to give up and go, oh, he wasn't getting over. Like nobody's buying that.
Mm.
Like how could they? How could they possibly get over like that? Like that's just shitty booking, right? No two ways about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure, like we said earlier, that that is probably just one of those excuses that compounded with other reasons is why he was let go. It
Yeah.
wasn't just because he's too old, because he's not, and it's not just because he didn't get over it, because he got over in NXT.
Mm-hmm.
People liked him, but the Keith Lee thing is more shocking because there's a guy that he was getting over. People wanted to see him on the main roster. Didn't he have a match at like he was at the Royal Rumble and people popped whenever he was in the ring with Brock Lesnar? That was amazing.
Yeah, he had like a face off with like Roman Reigns as well, and maybe even a match with him. I can't remember now, but like he was positioned originally when he first got brought up as like a potential future star. And
Yes.
then obviously like his whole COVID experience has derailed a lot of that momentum. But like you could see the sort of warning signs before that as well, where WWE just sort of took their foot off the gas and stopped putting him in a position to succeed. And then you start getting the reports of like Vince being unhappy with his ring work and unhappy with the way he looks. Like he doesn't want his like bare chest, so you can see how big he is. He wants him to cover up and stuff like that. And it's like, why are you making these little tweaks and stuff which are so unnecessary, and which the fans obviously picked up on as well and kind of were left scratching their heads with. And like even giving him like a nickname like Bearcat and stuff, it's like, is that really going to be the thing that changes it all around for him? I don't think so.
Well, you see, like that shit I didn't mind. Like him being the Bearcat Keith Lee and him being a heel, I didn't mind because that is a classic case of Vince McMahon or their booking committee kind of just like giving somebody a challenge. They do this a
Mm.
lot where they'll be like, well, try this and see if that gets you over, you know, and sometimes it works. We were used to Keith Lee being a face, but he could probably be a really good heel.
Yeah.
So that was just them trying, and like, if they just stuck with that shit and try to make him a heel, which would have been the opposite of what he was in NXT, and give us something. Because if we just got the same Keith Lee that we got in NXT, that would be lots of fun for a while. But wouldn't it be more interesting to see him being a heel and doing something different? So I don't hate that. I hate the way they did it, because they didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
They really fucking dropped the ball there. But then, like I said, I feel like they give up after the COVID thing. I think that after that they were like, maybe this guy is worth putting our energy into.
Yeah.
And which is a silly reason. Nobody can help getting fucking COVID. That's, we're at the point now where we're probably all gonna get it at some point, which sucks. But that's a crazy world we live in, and some people aren't doing a very good job of protecting others from getting COVID. So the likelihood of us getting it is probably pretty high because everybody else been a prick. But it's is what it is, right? So I think that the COVID thing is a big strike. Now I don't know if they have, he hasn't been vaccinated or whatever. I haven't heard that, but I suspect that him getting COVID to begin with was probably a black mark on his name, more so than not getting over with the fans, because I don't think that was what the issue was.
Mm.
I think that he was over with the fans, and he just didn't get a chance to show that. Karrion Kross, I think, is a different beast, because I feel like it was on their heads to make us give a shit about Karrion Kross, because that's what they did in NXT. It was the flashy showing us, they presented them. What was it? Isn't it like an old Paul Heyman thing where like you accentuate their strengths and hide their weaknesses, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Hide what Karrion Kross isn't very good at, and make a big point of showing off what he is really good at, and that's like we were talking about Ryback not that long ago, which was fucking hilarious. Now I'm thinking about it. But like, what there was a point where Ryback started to get really over, unbelievably. And why did he start getting really over? Is just because he did a bunch of squash matches and he could show how strong he was.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything else he did. It wasn't him showing his actual personality, and thank God for that. Can you imagine if he was just out there cutting actual Ryback promos?
Oh
He's
God.
talking about kicking Vince McMahon's ass.
Jesus.
Oh, that would have been. I mean, that would have been wonderful, really, but it wouldn't have got him over. But like him being in there, like he's not a technical, wizard or anything like that. But you put him in there for 5 minutes and he just beats up some jobbers. That was impressive. He's gonna get over that way, right?
Yeah.
Karrion Kross could do shit like that too. If you get him in there, and the way they used to do with Goldberg, although for some reason these days they understand the criticism of Goldberg is he's not very good at wrestling long matches, so they try to make him wrestle long matches. And you're like, if he didn't get this in his prime, he's probably not going to get this in 2021. Maybe don't have him do 20-minute matches these days. But that Karrion Kross could have done that. Just come in and under 10 minutes, just kill people, right?
Yeah, under 5 minutes. Jeez.
Yes,
Just
the right
steamroll
people. And with the big flashy entrance and stuff and scarred by his side, that could have worked if they packaged it right, but they didn't. They're out here, like you said, him losing to Jeff Hardy doesn't make him look good. Because in the grand scheme of things, what is Jeff Hardy doing right now?
Exactly.
Nothing. If he'd have lost to Jeff Hardy that was on a run, fair enough. But Jeff Hardy just kind of pops in and out. Like that's silly. That's such a weird thing for them to do. And obviously your momentum's going to get crushed if that happens, So, I don't know, man. But there must be some reason why they fucking, put the kibosh on Karrion Kross and Scarlett and stuff like this. And it, does it have to do with vaccinations? Does it have to do with them being a pain in the ass backstage? I don't know. I don't know this stuff. I know that Karrion Kross wasn't very happy with the way he was being treated whenever he was in TNA or Impact. God, I can never. It's just gonna be TNA forever. Just always TNA. You see what you've done, Vince Russo? Fucking prick! You ruined wrestling forever. I mean, we knew this anyway, but whatever. But like, he wasn't very happy with the way he was being presented in TNA/Impact. But he was vocal about that. People knew that. And now that he's not working for the WWE, I imagine we're soon going to be hearing all about how terrible WWE was, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that this points to him being a pain in the ass because nobody likes shitty booking. And we've seen Karrion Kross has been the victim of some shitty booking. But, that's pro wrestling. You're at the whims of the booker. That's just the way it is. Could him being a pain in the ass be part of the reason why he was released? Could it be something to do with, like I said, I don't know his vaccination status, but did he get, I haven't heard of him getting it, but like, is that a factor? Possibly. I feel like once we had heard that all these releases were happening, a lot of people, myself included, were very like knee-jerk reaction, angry at the WWE for their budget cut bullshit. But it does seem like after that came out, there seems, maybe there is some kind of like reason for some of these guys getting let go. Like the Lucha House Party got released because one of them had requested his release.
Yeah.
And the other one just, see you later. Which is probably a bit harsh. There was somebody else, I think, on that list that had requested their release.
Only Lorcan had a couple of years ago.
Yes, and they were just like, well, if you wanted your release, here you go. So some of those you can't really be too upset about because that's what they wanted.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still not nice to lose your job for one thing, especially given the last 18 months where there's been like a lot of job uncertainty around anyway, and all that kind of jazz. But I mean, I think the disappointing thing as well is it kind of suggests that the WWE system doesn't work as well, like in terms of like the performance center and all that kind of thing. They spent all this money on a performance center and basically trying to train wrestlers from the ground up to be the WWE superstars that they want them to be. And they've done this with literally hundreds of superstars now, and like the majority of the people who've been released over the last year or 2 years really have been products of this system. And it's like, well, if that's the case, then what is the performance center actually accomplishing then? Like, you get maybe one or two guys coming up and actually sticking on the main roster for every like 20 or 30 who end up getting fired eventually. So it's just like, well, I don't know, man. It feels like if I was Triple H, I'd be really pissed off right now.
Right, dude. That dude's just off a fucking heart attack.
And NXT is his baby, man. Like the Performance Center, all of it. It's his thing for the future, which he's, poured his heart and soul into, and he's so proud of, and he should be proud of it, because in terms of what that Performance Center is, and like the wealth of knowledge that is available to these wrestlers coming up, the business has never had anything like it before, and it's a good thing for the business and for these young aspiring wrestlers to kind of be able to take advantage of that. But when the end result is, they get the wrestlers all prepared for the main roster and all suited up and booted and ready to go, and then they go up there and immediately get squandered because 77-year-old Vince McMahon hasn't got a fucking clue what to do with them. It's just it's got to be really frustrating.
Well, that is true. You bring up some very good points there. You like the fact that so many of these cuts this year have been NXT related. There's been a lot of people that either from NXT or that were called up from NXT to the main roster. And it does give the impression that NXT is no good, where you and me both know that's not the case. But it gives that impression. The WWE are taking these guys that made a really good splash in NXT, calling them up to the main roster, and then going, oh, looks like you can't hang with the big time kids, get rid of him. Which makes NXT look bad, but it makes them look even worse. That they can't get these guys over. Like Triple H can get these guys over in a barn, and Vince McMahon can't get these guys over. I imagine it must be incredibly frustrating for Triple H. I mean, when the Samoa Joe one was earlier this year.
Yeah.
And, Triple H was on the phone to Samoa Joe, getting him to come back. And look where he is now. How did that pay off? That's that's mystifying in its own right. What happened to Joe? What's up with that? That's a whole other thing. But Triple H has spent a lot of time and effort, and rightfully so, trying to make these guys look good. And in the NXT world, they have looked really good. He's done a very good job of presenting people right. We'll use Karrion Kross as a perfect example. Like we said, they hit his weaknesses and played to his strengths, and it worked. People liked him. He was a good heavyweight champion. And when they came to the main roster, they took all that shit away, and they said, "Hey, he's not getting over." Like, well, I wonder why. Like, not everybody is the same. You can't all get over the same way. Especially not whatever way Vince McMahon thinks he can get them over, which is bizarre. I don't understand what the fuck you think. It goes back to something we've been talking about for a long, long time, which is the influence of the current Vince McMahon on the product. The WWE, whether we like it or not, is a different beast than it used to be. It's very kid friendly. It's very kind of entertainment-y and not very wrestly. Which you and me being the crazy dreamers that we are, prefer our wrestling to have wrestling in it. We're a crazy bunch. And we've said before about how much different the wrestling landscape or the WWE landscape would look if Triple H were to take over.
Yeah.
Things would probably look a lot more like NXT.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this brings up a whole other fucking quandary in that if Triple H was in charge and the WWE started to look more like NXT, then what would NXT look like? Like the whole point of there being separate brands is that the WWE is different from NXT, you know. And for a long time, this was fine because if we didn't like the WWE, and we didn't, we could still enjoy NXT.
Mm.
The problem now is that they're starting to muddy the waters there. NXT 2.0 is what it is. I'm still not sure what that is. And then all the people that were on NXT that got called up to the main roster are disappeared or they're no longer what they used to be. So you've lost that fun edge to it as well. The whole thing seems very strange and you know, badly thought out. So it makes you wonder what's going on over there, but also like what would Triple H do?
Mm.
What could he do? Now, I feel like, you know, without getting too negative about the whole thing, we're probably edging closer and closer to a time, yeah, to a time whenever Triple H will run the company, right?
I mean, in theory, but let's face it, Vince's mum is. I think is she still alive, or she at least made it to 100 or something. So there's some strong genes in that family.
Vince McMahon's a scrapper.
Yes,
He's a scrappy dude. But also remember, what age was Vince McMahon Sr. when
this
he
is
gave up the
true.
company?
Yeah.
You know, I think Triple H needs to make a play at some point
Or
to
get the
go.
fuck out.
I was thinking about that. I'm like, what if Triple H did leave?
Mm.
What if Triple H did leave and just be like, you know what? Because now he's got a legitimate reason to do so. He's like, fuck this. Are you kidding me? All my dudes are gone. How am I supposed to run this shit now?
Mm.
You know, like that wouldn't really surprise me. Because what else is he gonna do? You know, he needs to be. It's weird that in 2021 we're like, people need to listen to Triple H more.
I know, man. Never would have said this like 15,
Can
20 years ago.
Can you exactly? Can you imagine 20 years ago saying people need to listen to Triple H more and Vince McMahon less? We would have been like, what are you talking about? But it seems to be the way of the world that we need to. We need to. Yeah. I think that WWE ran by Triple H would probably be pretty fucking good.
Yeah, same.
But they need to get to that point, and you know, until we get there, we're just gonna see more. And the problem with the Vince McMahon run WWE is the fucking sycophants he has working with him.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really think there would have been all of these budget cuts and releases and shit like this if Johnny Ace and Bruce Pritchard and Nick Khan weren't working for him?
Exactly, yeah.
You know, like we're very negative on Vince McMahon, and rightly so. But you know that fucking Bruce Pritchard doesn't know dick about wrestling, which is bizarre that he's had a career in wrestling. But like, what, you know, his track record hasn't exactly been stellar.
Mm.
And when did he come back to work for that company? Because I feel like it was starting to get good, and then they brought him back again, and it started to get bad again.
Well, it was just after Eric Bischoff got fired after his couple of months as the executive producer of SmackDown. So that was a couple of years ago now, at least.
I don't think Bruce Pritchard is the best person to be in that company. Johnny Ace certainly isn't.
No.
How have they not learned by now that Johnny Ace doesn't know what the fuck he's doing? But yet there he is. Like, that's bizarre.
Mm.
You know? So I dare say that a lot of this stuff would have been different had that whole hierarchy of the WWE not been there. You know? But then again, like, maybe it would have. Maybe some of these guys would have been released. Maybe they were pains in the ass. Maybe there was COVID related things. Because I heard Sasha Banks didn't want to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
That was part of the reason why she got cut from SummerSlam.
Oh, okay.
Is that she wasn't vaccinated, and she wasn't willing to get vaccinated. And Becky Lynch came back and, became Becky Lynch. And as far as I'm aware, Sasha Banks is now vaccinated.
Right.
Which is why she's back on TV. So, Sasha has, I don't want to say she's learned her lesson. That sounds strange, but like, you know what I mean? Like, she was somebody who was, or from what I've heard, she was somebody that was anti-vax and has now got it to align with the company, which is, that's the company's mandate. You know what I mean? If people don't like that, they have to remember that they work for a company.
Mm-hmm.
And the WWE are a worldwide company that I feel like they had a thing going where like they were like, okay, like by the end of the year or whatever, like kind of like now-ish, like we're going to be going back on the road soon. You need to be vaccinated by this point, otherwise you're in trouble. And I feel like, that could have been part of the reason why some of those guys were let go, is because by this point they weren't vaccinated or had no intention of being vaccinated. You know what I mean?
Potentially, yeah.
I think that could have been, but that's it. Like, we don't really know that one for sure, but it seems like, that one makes sense from the point of view of a big company like the WWE.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Whereas some of these guys, if they don't like getting vaccinated, can pop up in AEW where they don't require that at all.
As long as they get a test, apparently.
Yeah, so they don't have to. What was it he said? Tony Khan said that they don't. It's not required.
Yeah, it's not mandatory, but
yes,
they will test you if you don't have the vaccine.
But why not just get the vaccine then? But that also was interesting because last year Tony Khan was rightfully so. We applauded him for being very good with the testing and the way he was structuring everything to try and like keep COVID down in AEW. That was the thing that happened last year when it broke out, and we commended him for that. Very strange that he wouldn't like require being vaccinated, because that's such a simple thing to do, right?
Yeah.
But doesn't that make you think that there's an awful lot of people on his show that he can't get rid of, right? I mean, WWE have proven that if people don't play by their rules, they can get rid of them, right? And if somebody doesn't get themselves vaccinated, they'll just cut them. But if somebody in AEW doesn't get vaccinated, maybe those are high-profile names that they can't get rid of. You know what I mean?
Maybe. Who knows?
I don't know. We don't know. Far be it from us to speculate. But is there anything else you want to say about these crazy cuts? Do you have a list of the names?
Yeah, I've got a list. So the people who got cut this time around were Nia Jax, Eva Marie, Mia Yim, Harry Smith, Keith Lee, Karrion Kross, Lindsay Dorado, Gran Metalik, Jeet Ramah, Katrina Cortez, Trey Baxter, Zayda Ramirez, Jesse Camille, B-Fab, Oni Lorkin, Ember Moon, Frankie Monet, and Scarlett Bordeaux.
Now, some of those NXT women, you're like, I don't get why they got cut. I don't know why Ember Moon or Frankie Monet got cut. But again, there must be some other reason for it. Budget cuts that's not going to fly. There's something's up, right? Ember Moon was a pretty important part of that roster for a while.
Yeah, but I think it was her choice to go back to NXT as well. Like, I think her confidence was a bit rocked because she had that big injury that kept her off the main roster for a long time, and she didn't even know if she was going to wrestle again, and she wanted to go back to NXT rather than up to Raw or SmackDown, because then she could kind of ease back in, find herself, and kind of get back to what she was doing before. But obviously maybe that pissed off some of the higher ups in WWE who are like, well, why doesn't she just come straight back up to the main roster? And
Maybe we
I,
get again, like that could be it. We don't know,
yeah.
But like it feels like something was up with some of those releases,
Mm.
But yes, is there anything else you want to say about some of those guys?
Well, just that, I mean, I'd say for all of the people who've been released, like over the last year or 2 years, you could say that like their dream was probably to wrestle for WWE, wrestle on WrestleMania, and all that kind of stuff. And with the almost cruel way that they've lost their jobs amidst this pandemic, and then almost inevitably with like the budget coming out and the quarterly results and stuff saying that they've had these record years and whatnot, and like they must be feeling pretty disheartened by the whole process and by WWE in general as well. So WWE's kind of mandates change a lot, like the whole idea of only signing wrestlers who are under 25 now and all that kind of thing. That will probably change within a couple of years, and maybe they want to do business with some of these people they've released again, but I can't see any of these guys wanting to go back and work with WWE in the future if such an opportunity comes up, because they've just been burnt and they've just been screwed over and treated like shit, really.
Yes.
And that's like a really bad, sort of thought to have about this whole process. That these guys who dreamed of wrestling for WWE and being big stars there, it's just been burned by the company so badly that now they've got a chip on their shoulder and they're going to go and look elsewhere to kind of achieve their dreams from now on. And it probably puts off other people, like people who've not signed up to WWE yet or haven't had that opportunity, from doing the same thing, because they could end up getting burned the exact same way and just being thrown away like yesterday's rubbish. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a damaging situation for WWE, like in terms of recruiting future talent, as much as it is, well, I'd say it's more of a damaging thing for the wrestlers who's got released, but still, it's just like I can't see why anyone would want to go and sign with WWE, because it's not the only game out there anymore, and there are other options out there, and I wouldn't be surprised if more people start taking those other options.
I think that's a good point, in that whether or not they know it, maybe the WWE haven't realized it yet, but all of these releases this year have really had a negative effect on how people look at that company. The fans and the wrestlers. A lot of the wrestlers who might have aspired to being, a wrestler in WWE are probably looking at these releases and seeing how expendable they are and just thinking it's probably not worth the effort. And a lot of the guys who have been released are thinking, well, that was a, fucking waste of time. You're right in that it's not only the only game in town anymore. I think that the indies have never been hotter, and AEW is a big name. There are other places for people to work. We were talking about fucking Ring of Honor last week. We're like, where are they gonna get all these people from?
Well, luckily for them, all the 90-day release things run out by then. So
isn't that a coincidence? Isn't that a hell of a coincidence that a lot of these big names will be ready to go just in time for the new Ring of Honor reboot? There are other places to work now, and I feel like people's opinions have shifted for sure. The wrestlers' opinions have shifted from wanting to main event WrestleMania to just they want to go out and wrestle. And they want to have a career in wrestling, and it's possible to have a career in wrestling without having a long career in the WWE. They could do that and work somewhere else now and be totally fine. I think that's something. Well, that goes into the mindset of what the WWE have right now, in that they want to build their own stars, so they couldn't give a shit. They're like, we don't care if these guys never come back to work for us. And also they have the mindset, and I think this is still true, of the people always come back.
Yeah.
They always come back. Ultimate Warrior came back. They always come back, man. time heals all wounds. After a while, the WWE can make some kind of play and get a lot of these people back. You know, I think that it's a weird situation, man. I think that people are probably gonna not sign on to the WWE for a while, but like we said, they don't need to. WWE are intent on making their own stars, and in 3 or 4 years' time, whenever that fails, they'll go back to the indie thing that they were doing. You know what I mean? I don't think this is a hard and fast rule where they're like, no more indie guys. I'm like, that's gonna change.
Yeah, guaranteed.
And it'll probably be a more fun place to. I think it's probably a pain in the ass to work there right now, but it seems to come in like fits and starts. The WWE, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. So it's a crazy situation, but we'll see. Let's see what happens. Is there anything else you want to say, or should we wrap things up?
Let's wrap things up.
All right. Well, thank you very much for listening. Hopefully, I mean, all of those guys that got released, they can get jobs anywhere. You know, some of those guys. Look at what happened to Zack Ryder. You have a little bit of ingenuity. If you really want to be good at wrestling on the indies, you can make a name for yourself. And I'm sure a lot of those guys can do it. A lot of those guys did come from the indies. They'll be able to, you know, they'll be fine. That's the thing. They'll be okay. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. See how many of those guys end up back in WWE. See how many of those guys end up in fucking AEW by the end of the year.
I would say at least half of them.
Yeah, let's say 50%. But we'll see. We will see. So we're going to wrap things up for today's episode. Make sure to stay subscribed so you get to check out all the other great episodes that we do, some of which might be about right back again. I don't know. It's a surprise. You'll have to stay subscribed to find out. But until then, we will see you guys in another episode. So, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.